So it's no secret that the Jaguars had a wild free agency. They went out there and spent a bunch of money on a bunch of different positions. And I think the player that really leads off the Jaguars free agency when you think of Jaguars 2022 free agency is wide receiver Christian Kirk. A big reason is just because of the contract that he got. It's kind of being talked around NFL circles a lot. And of course, with Jaguar fans as well, because we all knew that we needed to target a big time receiver, and the big time receiver wound up being wide receiver Christian Kirk from the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I want to go ahead and break down maybe why the Jaguars brought in Christian Kirk and potentially what Christian Kirk will bring to the Jaguars. But before I do it, last night in my stream, I did bring on the AZ Sports fan to come over here and kind of talk about his side of the whole Christian Kirk career over there for the Arizona Cardinals. So I'm going to go ahead and insert that into this video, and then after I'll discuss it from my point of view. All right, so real quick now, we are going to bring in the AZ Sports fan in here. What's going on, my man?
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Dude, we're good. So we're all, obviously, we gave Christian Kirk recently a 4-year, $84 million deal, man. When you saw that go through, what were the thoughts going through your head?
Honestly, I'm glad it wasn't us. Honestly, that straight up. I like Christian Kirk. Hometown guy, great. Loved him in the slot. Did some really good stuff for the Arizona Cardinals, but that contract shocked the living stuff out of me, honestly. I was very, very shocked with that contract. Hey, good for him, though. That's all I got to say. Good for him.
Yeah, and it's structured in a decent way to where it's eye-popping, and I think it does well for his PR and his agent to look at that and say, "Oh, I got my guy this kind of contract." But I do so with Christian Kirk, I guess tell us a little bit about him. What kind of player the Jaguars getting with him?
Yeah, with Christian Kirk, I honestly think it's kind of the tale of the Arizona Cardinals. We try to force players to do what we want. And unfortunately, the first years of Christian Kirk, where he should have been long in the slot, we try to force him on the outside just because we never really had anybody opposite side. You know, Larry, and obviously Larry left. DeAndre Hopkins came in. Kind of the same situation. When we had AJ Green last year, we kind of forced him to be in the slot, which where he should have been, and he thrived. He was very close to 1,000 yards, if not 1,000 yards, and probably had his best careers in terms of stats for the Arizona Cardinals. And, you know, I think when you think of Christian Kirk, you think of a player that is very good in the locker room. He seems like he's kind of one of those. I don't think he's quite a leader, but definitely one of those that he's going to be like adapting and become the best friend of the quarterback. So hopefully Trevor Lawrence has a really good weapon in him. I really do like him as a wide receiver. It sucks to see him go in terms because he's a hometown guy and we drafted him. We don't really have people that we draft that really work out for us. So when they do work, it sucks to see them go. But he's a good player, man. He's a very good player.
So
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Did you have any concern with Kirk with his I mean, I know he had 5 touchdowns this year, and then and 4 of them were in the first 6 weeks of the season. So was there any concern from week 7 on when you weren't getting much production out of him about I mean, I know, and we talked about earlier, there was a lot of mouths to feed in that offense, but was there any concern about his play in the later half of the year?
One of the biggest things of his flaws to me, at least when I've seen him play, is he's not physical enough. And that's why I think he always needed to be in the slot. But the offense for the Arizona Cardinals, it wasn't just Christian Kirk. We just fell apart. It had I guess it had to do with him a little bit, but the moment that DeAndre Hopkins went down, our offense almost looked a shell of what we used to look. And that was from the offensive line not holding up, our wide receivers not doing as much, not having DeAndre Hopkins out there hurt a lot more than it should have for the Arizona Cardinals. And unfortunately, Christian Kirk was kind of fell victim to that. So, yeah, he didn't have a lot of stats towards the end of the season, but that was just straight all around. AJ Green didn't do very well. Zach Ertz didn't do very well in the stretch. So it sucks to say that DeAndre Hopkins was most of our offense, but it honestly, that's what it seems. So if you can get Christian Kirk the first half of that season to replicate, I think that's a win for you guys. But the second part, it's not his fault at all. I just think that we just imploded.
So do you think that when you guys drafted Rondale Moore, do you think that was a sign that Christian Kirk was probably on his way out?
Yeah, well, a little of both, because we could have said the same thing for Andy Isabella when we drafted him. Everybody had that same kind of thought. Oh, speedster guy's gonna, take the top off of any defense. He didn't work out for us. So when we saw Rondell Moore get drafted, my first thought was, oh boy, here we go again. This is what we're trying to do. Why can't we get a big wide receiver outside? Yeah, we had AJ Green, but a lot of everybody in the fan base here was like, oh man, everybody comes here to retire, stuff like that. We just have this big stigma about Arizona being a retirement home for a lot of different players. So Rondo Moore so far looked decent towards the beginning of the season, but it's kind of the same thing, tailed off towards the end, and it's just because we completely imploded. Cliff Kingsbury, our head coach, said it himself, like he didn't do enough to adjust like towards the second half of the season, and it's no like shock. We all pretty much knew this, but he thought he gave us a little Easter egg going into this next season. But
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, we're here with the AZ Sports Fan. You can find him on YouTube. He's a big, Arizona Cardinals YouTuber, and he does a few other things too. So, I don't know if Jason, do you have any last questions for my guy?
No, I mean, I was talking about earlier. I watched a lot of Christian Kirk from this season and last season, and like I was saying, he looked really good when he was able just to run by single coverage. I mean, the corner routes, the flies, the stuff from the slot. I mean, running corners from the slot is probably what he's best at. Just beautiful routes. He stays so low, super smooth when it comes to it. The quarterback,
Kyler Murray.
Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray was able to create time with his feet and get him open. So, do you think as a traditional? I mean, although Trevor can create time, he's not as much as Kyler Murray. Is Christian Kirk going to be able to get open? Is he going to be able to do what he did in a standard offense with a quarterback who's a drop back passer?
I think so. Yeah, as long as you don't do too much in terms of like try to fit him into something he's not. He's not an outside wide receiver. Maybe in college he could have been, but here in the NFL, I seen that separation was probably one of his big weaknesses. Keep him in the slot. I think he will thrive for you guys there, and I'm excited to see what he does for you, especially with Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, a lot of hype behind him and going into his second year. So I think he'll do very good. Just keep him in the slot. That's all I gotta say.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time, man. I'm probably going to clip this and actually post this as a video later on. So, I know it's getting after you on Instagram a little bit, but we're all wondering who we just dropped this coin on. You know what I mean? Because obviously he wasn't blowing up the the fantasy numbers, and obviously you think of Cardinals wide receivers, and the first guy you think of is DeAndre Hopkins, not Christian Kirk. But hey, man, really appreciate you for coming here, and enjoy your live stream that's starting a little bit.
I appreciate it, guys. Have a great rest of your day later.
Take it easy, man.
So big shout out to the AZ Sports Fan for coming on and telling us a little bit about his side of things. I thought that was, really interesting to hear what he had to say. So let's go ahead and go into the Jaguar side of things. Now, obviously, the big reason why it made a bunch of headlines anywhere and why a bunch of people were talking about Christian Kirk to the Jaguars is because of his contract. And I know myself, when I see other teams sign a guy to a contract, I look at the contract and go, whoa, that's crazy. And then I move on. I don't really look much into it. But when you break it down, it's not really as bad as it seems. Now, Christian Kirk signed a 4-year, $72 million deal worth up to $82 million. So a lot of people are saying, oh, he signed a 4-year deal, 4-year, $82 million deal. That's $21 million a year. This guy, he's not worth that. But the $82 million is with all the incentives. So there might be incentives thrown in there like, oh, if you get a 1,000-yard season, you throw in an extra $1 million. If you make a Pro Bowl, that's $1 million. So different things like that get thrown into to lead up to the $82 million. So in all honesty, we hope that he earns all that $82 million because that means that he's hitting his incentives, which means that he's very productive for the Jaguars. Now, what this essentially is, it's a 2-year deal worth $37 million. And the team can release him after 2 years and pretty much save $11 against the cap. So it's basically a 2-year out almost. Now, the 2022 cap hit is not that great. It's $7.5 million, which isn't a whole lot. But then once 2023 through 2025 come about, it's $21.5 million against the cap. Now, I could imagine after 2 years, there could be a situation where he restructures, where they give him a lot of that money up front, and that will release the cap a little bit. The Jaguars have been known to do that in the past with their players, and Shad Khan, if there's anything good about Shad Khan that we can say positive about him, is that he is not cheap when it comes to free agents. He will do everything he needs to do to make sure players are paid, to make sure that it helps out the Jaguars when it comes to acquiring future talent. So that's one thing about him. Now, if you look at his numbers from 2018 through 2020, he averaged 640 receptions or 640 receiving yards. He also 53 receptions and 4 touchdowns. Those are all averages of those years put together. And then in 2021, Kirk had his best year with 982 receiving yards, 77 receptions with 5 touchdowns. And it's funny because a lot of people say, "Oh, why are they paying a guy that has never had a 1,000-yard season?" Look, he was 18 yards away from a 1,000-yard season, so whatever. And the thing about Christian Kirk is that the thing that makes me feel like he's going to work out better in Jacksonville than Arizona is, first of all, his age. He's 25 years old, so it really feels like he's in a prime of his career and his best football is ahead of him. And also how he was brought in. He was brought in the 2020 or 2018 draft class, which was led by head coach Steve Wilkes. A year later, Cliff Kingsbury inherited that roster. So Christian Kirk was never a true Cliff Kingsbury guy. On the other hand, the Jaguars acquired him with head coach Doug Peterson's, and he was acquired with a lot of money. So when the Jaguars build their playbook this season, it's going to be 100%. A lot of it is going to revolve around, of course, Trevor Lawrence. Most of it will revolve around Trevor Lawrence, but a big part of it is Christian Kirk, because they want to be able to make sure they get their return on investment and make sure that Kirk has a big time role in this offense, and that the Jaguars can really play Christian Kirk to his strengths, which seems like it would be kind of the slot position. Now, also, I think a big thing with the Jaguars is that really to allow Christian Kirk to succeed is a couple things. One, he plays his best football from the slot. That's one thing that with Arizona, they were trying to kind of force him into that outside receiver role and kind of make him play X a little bit. But when you're the Jaguars, you have to make sure that you're playing to his strengths, which is the slot. And I think what Christian Kirk does bring is he brings explosiveness, he brings great route running ability, separation, and good hands. I don't feel like you could really say that about anybody last year on the Jaguars receiving corps. So the Jaguars with Christian Kirk does get a whole lot better. However, this is only step one in fixing the wide receiver group, because the wide receiver group definitely is not fixed right now. The Jaguars need to bring in a wide receiver one, and that is where things get difficult, because I think with Christian Kirk, the Jaguars fans, and probably even, I hope at least Trent Baalke and Doug Peterson know, is that he's a wide receiver too. He's not that dominating wide receiver one. And the Jaguars, this will be the hardest part about the offseason. Because if the Jaguars want to get a pass rusher, it's easy. You have the number 1 pick. You can go get Aiden Hutchinson just like that. No team is going to, you don't have to jump any team to get him. He's sitting right there for your taking. But the Jaguars, they need a wide receiver one, and that will most likely come with pick number 33. So they have to have a list of guys that they want to target, and they have to hope that he's there. And if you have a list of 3 or 4 guys that you hope are there, that you think can become that, and then they start to get plucked, and all of a sudden pick number 27 is here, and you only have 1 guy left from that group, you might have to get creative and figure out how you are going to trade up to get that guy. It's going to be difficult. No one said that it's not, but it is possible. Now, that is really, really crucial what the Jaguars do at pick number 22, or 20, and that pick number 33. But there's always the thing about trading back in the draft. I don't know how possible it is, but there is always that when you trade back from 1 to wherever, and then maybe the edge rusher or offensive tackle is kind of off the board. So they need to keep that in mind. But what a big thing I think that the Jaguars are trying to do with the receiving core is that they are trying to change the mentality of it. Last year, the wide receiver group was lethargic. I don't know if they had a true leader in that group and a really anybody extremely special. I think they offered Chark a low ball deal and they knew he was going to walk. And now the Jaguars are potentially trying to move on from Laviska Shenault. According to Mike Duraco, they're looking for trade partners for him. So there's a really very good case that maybe he's not on the team next year, which is definitely one to monitor. And the Jaguars signed 2 free agents, Zay Jones and Christian Kirk, obviously, to come into the wide receiver group. And the Jaguars will most likely draft at least 1 wide receiver. They might even draft 2. So there is a complete overhaul in the wide receiver group from both a skill perspective and from a, how you approach the game, a mentality perspective, because Zay Jones and Christian Kirk, both high energy guys, both really, really good teammates, both the guys that put in the extra work at the wide receiver group. And I think that's what the Jaguars want with their receiving core, because we didn't have a whole lot of that last year. So those are some things involving Christian Kirk. I think ultimately the Jaguars will try to build an offense around Trevor Lawrence, Christian Kirk, and around the strengths, as opposed to, the way he was over with the Arizona Cardinals, where they tried to really throw Christian Kirk into their scheme and said, okay, go out there and do it. So those are some of my takes. Let me know what you guys think. I know I'm making this video before Christian Kirk will officially speak to the media, so I don't know if things will change between now and then. It'd probably be smart if I waited till later to make this video, but whatever. I don't think things will change too much, but I'm excited about this pick. The Jaguars spent some money, which is good, and the Jaguars brought in a couple wide receivers, which is good. So now time will tell about whether this was a good move. With all that said, thank you for watching the video. If you guys enjoyed, please drop a like for me. That would be awesome. And subscribe to the channel. And also, if you guys want to be a part of a really good Jaguars group chat, go join the relevant app. Link down in the description below. Download it. Join Jaguars Fanatics. And we can go in there and talk. And I do an exclusive podcast once per week with former Jaguars linebacker Tom McManus over there. So you guys don't want to miss it. Definitely go join. And with all that said, thank you for watching. Go Jags. You guys watched the whole video. Really appreciate that. You guys can subscribe to the channel for the best source of Jaguars news on the YouTube platform. Also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at UCF_Jaguar. And you can become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month for exclusive channel content. Thank you guys, and go Jags.